Hello, dear students. This evening, I'm going to talk to you about some very, very important laws that everybody should know, not just you in this class, but everybody. And that is the procedure that police officers should follow, the law that dictates how they should obtain a confession from an accused. I have a PowerPoint presentation that I'm going to post for you in your class. And as I go through the slides, you can be looking at it and see if that'll explain these very, very important issues. All right, so we're going to talk about interrogations, admissions, and confessions by people that are accused, and what are the laws that regulate the conduct of the police in attempting to obtain an admission or a confession from a person that is accused of a crime or from a person that is detained by them. All right, so let's begin with our laws. Criminal law controls the conduct of people. You commit a crime, you go to jail. Criminal procedure or criminal evidence controls the conduct of police officers in obtaining that evidence. And of course, the idea is that nobody is above the law. So just like ordinary people must follow the law, police officers should follow the law as well. Now, to start out with, interrogations by police officers are a very important and powerful tool for police officers to obtain evidence. But at the same time, it is such a powerful tool that can end up convicting innocent people. And that's not what we want. That's not what civilized society wants. So police interrogation of potential suspects is an essential part of fulfilling the duties of the police officers, and we all understand that. But there has to be some rules, because one should admit that a confession from an accused is a very powerful piece of evidence. Once a person confesses, it's basically case closed. And the reason why we have these rules that regulate how you obtain that confession is to make sure that that confession is truthful, so that we can make sure that it is not a false confession. For this, I'd like to tell you a personal story regarding one of my sons. I have 3 sons, and the youngest one had a lot of trouble in school, and sometimes he wouldn't do his homework. At one point, my husband was very frustrated with him. He was young at the time. My son was about 7 or 8 years old. And one day, the routine that we followed at our house was that my husband would take them to school every morning. But before, he would stop at his mother's house for coffee. So we would get the boys dressed, and he would go to his mother's house and pick up coffee. Then he would take them to the school. And in the afternoons, my mother-in-law would take care of my children. She would be the one that provided basically childcare while we worked. So on that particular day, in the morning, after several problems with this particular child of mine that didn't do his homework, my husband would, interrogated him and said, "Hey, did you do your homework?" At that point, my son said, yes, I did." "Well, where is it? I want to see it right now." Well, then my son was, I forgot it. Yesterday I went to my grandmother's house. It's there. I forgot it. Since he had lied before and had said things that were not true, that he had done his homework when he actually hadn't and stuff like that, my husband was extremely suspicious and irritated with him. And my husband has a very, very strong, powerful voice. And even though he doesn't intend to scream, his just voice is so loud. And he's a big guy. My husband is 6 feet tall, and my son was tiny at that time. And so my husband started telling him in this very serious, loud, intimidating voice, and said, I think you're lying. I think you're a liar. And I think you didn't do your homework. I think you don't have it. And if you tell me the truth, I can forgive you. But a lie, I cannot, and etc., 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 this whole lecture. So my son was just so cowering over all of this, and then he goes, okay, no, I didn't do my homework. And then, "Okay, well, admit it, why don't you admit it? Why aren't you a man? You need to learn to be a man," at 6 or 7 years old, right? So finally they go to my husband's mother's house to go pick up the coffee. And there's my mother-in-law with my son's homework. "Oh, by the way, he forgot his homework. It's right here." So obviously my son had confessed to not doing his homework when actually he had done it. And that wasn't just the first time that it happened. Several times he admitted to things that he really had not done. And I approached him and I said, "Why do you say things that are not true? You did do your homework, or you did do your chores, or you did do this, or you didn't do this. Why do you, admit to things that are not true?" And he said, I just get so scared, and it's just so easier. I think that they're happier if I say, they'll be happier if I admit that whatever they want to hear, I say it to make them happy. So I wanted to share that with you, because I know that a lot of people think, well, how can a guilty person, admit to something that they did not do? Well, it does happen. It happens more often. It happens many times. And there are studies that show that young males, especially young males with criminal backgrounds, tend to be the ones that will admit to things that they didn't do. It's called it's called a false confessions, or the symptom of false confessions. There was a famous case in New York where this victim, this woman, was brutally assaulted in Central Park in New York City. And the usual suspects were a group of young teenagers that were constantly harassing joggers at Central Park, and they were the ones that the police suspected they had done this. And of course, they were juveniles and they were young. The woman was so severely raped and assaulted that she lost her memory and had no clue if it was one assailant, 2, 3, or she had no clue what had happened. She barely survived what they did to her, or what was done to her. So the police went ahead and interrogated these juveniles, and they followed the protocol. They followed the law, more or less, and they got confessions out of them, and they got convicted. Later, these defendants that had confessed said, we were not, we didn't do this. We didn't do this. Well, too late. You already confessed. Too bad, so sad. Well, it turned out years later, and frankly, I don't know how many years later, but years later, when DNA was introduced, they did a study of the DNA on the evidence of the victim. Well, actually what happened was they caught this other guy, and he was convicted of a horrible crime. I'm not sure if it was rape or murder or something like that. And when they arrested this one individual, he said, remember that rape and assault at the Central Park jogger case? They're innocent. I'm the one that did that. And they didn't believe him, but sure enough, by that time there was DNA, and you know what? Sure enough, it matched. And all those initial confessions that these kids had done were not true. So that's just one of multiple examples of false confessions. And because it's such a powerful, powerful piece of evidence, it's important that everybody understand why we have these laws. That it's very important to understand why we have these laws. They're not there to protect bad people. They're there to protect innocent people. They're there to protect the fragile ones, the suspects that are easily manipulated into confessing to something that they did not do. Okay, so I'm going to pause right now, and we will continue with our next section, which is I'm going to read to you the Fifth Amendment and explain it to you a little bit. Thank you.